Boldwood presents Three in a Bed, written by Carmen Reid and read by Julie Maisie. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Chapter 1. Boldwood presents Three in a Bed, written by Carmen Reid and read by Julie Maisie. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Chapter 1. Boldwood presents Three in a Bed, written by Carmen Reid and read by Julie Maisie. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Chapter 1. Boldwood presents Three in a Bed, written by Carmen Reid and read by Julie Maisie. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Chapter 1. Boldwood presents Three in a Bed, written by Carmen Reid and read by Julie Maisie. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Chapter 1. Boldwood presents Three in a Bed, written by Carmen Reid and read by Julie Maisie. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Chapter 1. Boldwood presents Three in a Bed, written by Carmen Reid and read by Julie Maisie. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Chapter 1. Boldwood presents Three in a Bed, written by Carmen Reid and read by Julie Maisie. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Chapter 1. Boldwood presents Three in a Bed, written by Carmen Reid and read by Julie Maisie. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Chapter 1. Boldwood presents Three in a Bed, written by Carmen Reid and read by Julie Maisie. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Chapter 1. Boldwood presents Three in a Bed, written by Carmen Reid and read by Julie Maisie. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Chapter 1. Boldwood presents Three in a Bed, written by Carmen Reid and read by Julie Maisie. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Chapter 1. Boldwood presents Three in a Bed, written by Carmen Reid and read by Julie Maisie. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Chapter 1. Boldwood presents Three in a Bed, written by Carmen Reid and read by Julie Maisie. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Chapter 1. Boldwood presents Three in a Bed, written by Carmen Reid and read by Julie Mansell. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This book, she'd been repulsed to see a fleshy, snoring city boy whose name she couldn't recall fast asleep beside her. She had retrieved her underwear, pulled on yesterday's dress, picked up her bag and shoes and crept out. 3 heart-attack-inducing espressos later, in a cafe on the corner, she'd concluded that it was time to put as much effort into her personal life as she was putting into her career. 1 month after that, all psyched up to stay away from men, sex and one-night stands until she'd got her head together, she'd bumped straight into the one. After a 13-week romance, the longest she'd had for years, they got hitched. Fear of commitment. Ha! She had taken that plunge. Wonderful Don had seen straight through the tough city girl armour to the person underneath, the one who hadn't dared to fall in love since an intense first romance had gone wrong. But Don had taken her hand and convinced her this was the real thing. "Why get married?" she'd asked over and over. "It's so final." "Exactly," had been his answer. "I've finally found you." He'd urged her to make the leap with him, and when he'd slid the ring onto her finger, she'd felt terrified, yes, but there was so much love radiating out of him. She had committed and signed on the dotted line. In the distance, she could now hear the gentle roar of traffic as another sunny day in the capital revved up. She unlocked the door on her vintage Porsche, flung her coat and bags onto the passenger seat and climbed in. 40 minutes of commuter hell later, Bella arrived at Prentice & Partners, one of the city's smallest but sharpest firms of management consultants. "And good morning, Kitty," she greeted the company's executive assistant as she walked in. "Hi, Bella." Kitty looked up from her desk in the reception area. "Is Susan in?" "Of course. Girls first. Are the boys in to play today?" "Yep, Hector's due any time and..." Kitty checked her screen. "Chris will be here for the afternoon meeting, but maybe earlier." "OK, I'll just check the diary and put the coffee on, then I'll be ready for you," Bella told her. In her compact office, with its sleek wood and leather furniture, she settled in, hanging up her raincoat and filling the coffee machine before she took out her laptop, scanned her emails and opened her schedule. A typically busy day. There was a knock on the door, and Bella's thoughts were interrupted by Kitty. They generally liked to begin their daily briefing with some gentle teasing about Kitty's latest office outfit. Kitty, small with spiky red hair and curvy, was crammed into silver trousers, a tiny purple t-shirt and a silver-padded waistcoat. Platform-soled trainers with flashing lights completed the look. "Going clubbing later, are we?" Bella asked with raised eyebrows. A grin split Kitty's face. "Just because you like looking like an airline hostess. Silver is so now," Kitty added. "And anyway, power dressing does not equal power. Where are you headed, Bella? Straight for the glass ceiling, probably." "Oh no, it's too early for the serious stuff," Bella protested. Once their briefing was over, Bella started her calls. She was between 2 big contracts and restless to drum up new business. After her first call, her work mobile began to ring. The name, Preston Wells, flashed up, and she had a bad feeling. Taking a breath, she willed herself to stay calm. "Hello, Preston, how are you?" she said pleasantly. "You know exactly how I am," he fired back angrily. "I'm sacked. Sacked after 17 years of working my arse off for this company, only to have you come in here for 8 weeks and pull the entire thing apart." This was the worst part of her job, and it often racked her with guilt. Preston was late 50s with 3 children and an expensive lifestyle to maintain. He was going to find it hard to get another job as good as the one he'd been downsized from on her recommendation. "Have you any idea how much damage you've done?" he raged. "My colleagues, who have families to look after, are packing up and leaving in tears." She swallowed hard, not wanting to hear this. "Just who do you think you are?" he shouted down the phone. I'll tell you. You're some cocky little graduate with a bollocks business degree whose only idea of cost efficiency is sacking people, and you probably only got your ludicrously overpaid position by—" Not wanting to listen to any nasty accusations, she decided to interrupt. "Preston," she began, "I have a first in economics from the London School of Economics, where I was top of my year. I spent 4 years working for the biggest consultants in the country before I joined Prentice and Partners, and Susan Prentice is a woman who headhunted me." Undeterred, he shouted back, "We didn't need you bloodsuckers in here. You've destroyed us. I'm going to make sure you never get another contract in the city again, you smug bitch." She couldn't believe it. Blood was rushing to her cheeks as she stood up at her desk and said, more loudly now, "If you were as good at your job as I am at mine, AMP would never have needed consultants. Without my help, that firm would have gone to the wall in 2 years max, and everyone would have been laid off without the generous payout you've received." Just for good measure, she added, "How dare you phone up to insult me? You kept telling me one day you'd move to the country and restore antique furniture, so why don't you bugger off and do that?" Oh no. She instantly regretted the swear word, but he'd called her a bitch and she'd been riled. At that moment, she glanced at the door and saw her colleague, Chris, grinning at her. That was all she needed. Susan's number 2 listening to this. Quickly, she added, "Preston, I'm very busy. You'll have to excuse me. Thank you for your call." She heard an astonished gasp, but put the phone down before he could say anything else. "You tell them, Bella," Chris grinned, "just to bugger off to the country and restore antique furniture. I must remember that the next time I get one of those calls." "Don't," she said, relieved he was treating this lightly. "I'm sorry I lost it and embarrassed you heard." "Okay, I'm sure he pressed the buttons, but try not to make any enemies for life. People crop up over and over again. Anyway, how was your weekend?" "Good," she replied. "Don wasn't around, so I caught up with the girlfriends." "Nice. Any spare girlfriends by any chance? Looking for—" he began. "Nope," she cut him off and smiled. "Shame. Well," he reached for the door handle. "We have lots to do before this afternoon's meeting. Merris, Petersham. Any queries? I'm just next door. See you later." Soon there was another knock on the door. Hector, the fresh-out-of-uni boy, who wasn't working out as well as they'd hoped. Not yet, anyway. "You wanted to see me?" He poked a tousled head round the door. "Yes," she confirmed. He came in looking casually crumpled as usual. He still bought into that boho tweedy suit, not going to conform or try too hard kind of look. He was a brilliant guy. Why else would he be working here? But he still had to get it together. She'd tried being helpful, nice, forgiving, encouraging, but now she suspected he wasn't trying hard enough, and she may have to go a bit apprentice on him. She gestured for him to take a seat. "So, what is this?" She tossed a thick, spiral-bound report onto the desk. I was wondering if a few inaccuracies might have crept in." "A few inaccuracies?" She picked the report up again. "Let me just open it at random. 32% of £586,000. That is," she barely paused, £187,520. Yet, unbelievably, you've got 28,500 down here. Utterly out of the ballpark." "Well, I'm not a maths genius like you, Bella," he had the nerve to reply. "Then maybe buy yourself a calculator," she suggested, "because you need to sharpen up." He looked at her with surprise, but she continued. "This report is for a major company. You were working on how to trim their costs and save them money. Your mistakes could cost hundreds of thousands of pounds, could cost people their jobs. This is not a game, Hector. It's all very well having potential, but there comes a time when you have to prove it." There was a long pause. Bella was holding the report right in front of her face and shaking slightly. "Are you okay?" Hector asked. "Oh, God." She put the report down on the table with a slight laugh. "I should tear a strip off you, but I can't do this kind of thing with a straight face." I'm sorry? Do you want me to do the report again?" he asked. "No, I've already sorted it. but please concentrate on the next one, okay?" When Bella was on her own in her office again, she massaged her temples. Good grief, it wasn't even 10 a.m. yet. There was another knock before Kitty walked in with an enormous bouquet of flowers. "You thought we'd all forgotten, didn't you?" "Forgotten what?" Bella asked, completely clueless. "Your birthday, you idiot!" Oh my God! That had gone completely out of her mind. "Thank you." She took the flowers, then read the note signed by all 4 of her colleagues. "Thank you," she said again. "This is so unexpected and lovely." "There's a vase at reception. Shall I keep them out there till the end of play?" Kitty asked. "You're a star, Kitty. I bet everyone else would have forgotten." 9 hours later, after hundreds of calls, calculations, and a long meeting with Chris and Susan, Bella was finally writing her last email and tidying her desk for the day. Chris appeared at the door to ask if she was coming for a birthday drink over the road, and this time last year that's exactly what she would have done. Far too many drinks after work. But this birthday she declined, because at last it was time to get home to Don. The traffic was infuriatingly slow, so she redid her makeup, sprayed on perfume, and flipped through her music, playing everything that reflected her very good mood. She couldn't wait to see him again. 3 whole weeks was the longest they'd ever been apart. When she finally made it back to the mansion block that was home, she swung open the front door, ran to the lift, and jabbed on the button impatiently until the doors pinged open. Once she was inside the flat, everything was completely quiet, and for a heart-crushing moment she thought Don hadn't been able to make it back. Then she saw his bag and his battered oilskin coat in the hall. Quietly she walked through to the bedroom, where the curtains were closed, and Don was lying in bed asleep. She was so happy to see him. She felt her stomach flip and moved closer to take a long look at him. His handsome face was brown against the white pillow, but she saw the purple circles under his eyes. His thick, steely grey hair was rumpled, still wet from the shower he must have taken, and he looked deliciously clean and freshly shaven. She was sure he was naked under the duvet, and she couldn't help herself. She longed to feel his body against hers. She took off her shoes, slipped out of most of her clothes, then she slid into the bed beside him, curling her body up against her husband's warm, naked back. Wrapping her arms around him, she put her nose to the nape of his neck, breathing in the smell of his sandalwood soap that she'd been using too because she'd missed him so much. "Hello," she whispered. He stirred a little and answered with a so she ran her hand down his chest and stomach until she reached his sleeping cock. A longer, throatier came from him now. "Hello," she repeated. "Aren't you going to wake up and say hi?" "Oh, hello, and yes," he answered throatily, surfacing from sleep now. He rolled round to face her and kissed her on the lips. Then he smiled, creasing the skin around his eyes, and looking at her with so much love and longing she felt a lump in her throat. "Oh, I am so glad to be back, you have no idea," he said in a voice still thick with sleep. "I've missed you." She kissed him back, winding her legs round his, pulling him so close she could feel his cock stir against her as he moved his hands down from her waist to her buttocks. "Still can't believe I'm married to you," he said in between small, hungry kisses. He kissed her properly now, squeezing her against him and parting her lips with his tongue. She tasted his hot, minty mouth. As he pulled her up against his erection, she wound her fingers into his hair and placed teasing kisses on his neck and close to his ear. "I've missed you so much," she whispered. "I've missed you too, especially your breasts," he joked, stroking and licking at her nipples and the soft white skin around them. They felt and touched and kissed and licked until she rolled over and pulled him on top of her. Watching her face, he pushed inside and slowly moved in and out all the way along the length of his penis. "Are you teasing me?" she murmured, holding her hands on his hips and moving him faster until they were gasping together for long and oh so pleasurable minutes. When they fell apart, they were sweaty and breathing heavily. "Still so good," she told him, "and I can't believe you're my husband. Husbands are meant to wear slippers and wash the car, not give a girl breathtaking orgasms." Then she sat up, loving the fact that he couldn't take his eyes off her breasts, and added, Hey, you better not have forgotten it's my birthday. I phoned you first thing, remember? Yeah, you phoned, but where is my large expensive present? Bella, I've just come back from a war zone. There wasn't much to buy, but... He leaned over to fish about under the bed. I did get you this. He handed her a big, khaki, green furry hat with ear flaps. Genuine army issue, he said with a mischievous smile. Oh, thanks. She tried to look appreciative, then added, my first ever birthday present from you. Next year, remind me to get a different husband. And, he reached under the bed again, I can't tell you how hard I had to barter on the black market to get this. He presented her with a glossy pink box tied with ribbon. Happy birthday. She untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside was an extravagant set of lilac and black silk underwear, a lace-trimmed bra and G-string, a camisole top and French knickers. She picked the bra up and looked at the label. Correct size. She was impressed. Black market, ha-ha. Is this a present for me or for you? She asked. But before he could answer, said, Thank you very much. You're very sweet, and kissed him on the mouth. Oh, good. I'm glad you like them, because I really like them. Now stay there, he said, getting out of bed and putting his dressing gown on. I'm opening the wine, ordering Chinese, and I'm going to try and persuade you to spend the whole evening in bed with me. Well, okay then, since I now have the outfit for it, she said, lifting the camisole out of the box. They ate the food in bed and made each other laugh, Bella talking about work and Don telling his most hair-raising war stories. I do wonder if I'm getting a bit old for it, though, he said, serious for a moment. Will you stop it, she told him. You are not old. You're 41, and you're very fit. She leaned over, letting her dressing gown fall open and kissing him on the forehead. In so many ways, you're like a man half your age, she teased. He pulled her across so she was sitting in his lap. Thanks for your vote of confidence, darling. He kissed her on the mouth. Yuck, black bean sauce. She screwed up her face in mock horror. I'm going to kiss you somewhere else, then. He dropped her down onto her back and began to kiss her breasts and her stomach. She drew one foot up, bending her knee. He pressed his tongue into the small nub of clitoris, listening to her sharp intakes of breath. She said in a soft voice, Yes, just what I need for my birthday. Much nicer than cake and less fattening. When she was ready, he pulled himself up over her and she moved her legs apart so he could enter. She tensed every muscle until she was coming underneath him, clinging to his body to soak up the pleasure of his every move until he came too. Life could change completely in 1 year. She was married to Don. They were a power couple, completely committed to each other and their careers. This was perfect. This was everything she wanted. Her Don and their fabulous careers. Chapter 2. Back at work the next day, Bella was taking a final look over the latest pitch for business they were preparing to submit. Bella, hello! Kitty was at the door in pink dungarees with a fluffy white cat appliqued on the front pocket. Yes? Bella found herself staring at the cat. Susan's ready. You can go in now. Chris will be along in a minute. Thanks. That's a cute cat, Bella said as she gathered up her papers and headed for Susan's office. Are you coming down with something? Kitty joked. Susan was, as usual, on the phone. She waved Bella in and pointed to a chair. Bella's one-time mentor and now her boss was in her 40s, a rapier-thin, control-freaky workaholic. Susan had flawless hair, only ever dressed in very expensive beige or cream, and was married to an equally successful man. No kids, of course. This woman had been one of the stars at Lawrence & Co., the major league consultancy firm Bella had joined after university. Then Susan had left to set up on her own. She'd finally agreed to let Bella join her new business a year later. No matter how early Bella arrived at the office, Susan was there first, and she always stayed late. She was the definition of a workaholic and would occasionally tell Bella, My company is my family. I never wanted it any other way. Hello, Bella, she said as she finally ended the call, but didn't take her headset off. Take a seat, settle in. Susan gestured to a chair. I was speaking to Anne, you remember from the job last year? She's just had a baby, so I'm supposed to be all thrilled and excited for her. Good grief, I'm so glad you're never planning to breed. That's why I hired you, really. I needed another woman, a good one, but I didn't want someone who was going to go off and do the whole baby thing on me. Barely pausing for breath, she added, No matter what working mothers tell you, no real high-flyer career woman is ever the same afterwards. They just haven't got their whole mind on the job once they have children. In fact, she paused to give a little sarcastic smile, they haven't got their whole mind, if you ask me. Bella forced herself to return the smile, remembering when she'd told Susan that she wasn't planning to have children. It was when she'd first approached, pestered her for a job. Bella didn't want a family, but she still didn't think it was right for Susan to come out with the kind of sexist crap that no male boss would dare to utter. Luckily, she was saved from having to make any sort of answer by the arrival of Chris, so the meeting kicked off. Bella was in her car in a long queue of traffic when she called Don. Hello, lover, it's me. Do I hear traffic in the background? You're not out of the office, are you? He asked. Yes, out early for good behaviour. I'm in town, he said. Job's nearly over, but I won't have to go back to the newsroom, so want to meet up? We could go out for dinner round here. Uh-oh, you've forgotten about the drinks party? He obviously had. Drinkies, darling, she trilled, then added, at 8ish with my former colleagues and somebody's client. Ah, said Don, not at all disappointed. I'm going home to get dressed up. Are you coming back as well, or do you want to meet there? I'll meet you there, he said. I'll be a bit crumpled compared to your city friends, but you seem to like that. Maybe, she teased. She gave him the details and they said their goodbyes. When Bella had worked at Lawrence & Co., she'd been part of a close group of young, clever, ambitious colleagues, impatient to get ahead. They had worked hard and played harder in a group with private jokes, code words and pet hates. But over the past few months, Bella had noticed that she no longer felt such a part of it, a difference she put down to working for Susan now, but also to her recent marriage. She didn't want to be out socialising every night. She wanted to go home to Don. Even worse, Bella knew her little gang had picked up on this feeling and now thought of her as a slightly honorary member. And she sort of wanted to be out of it, but was still hurt that they had sidelined her. It also infuriated her that they didn't get Don at all, couldn't fathom what she was doing with a man who wasn't interested in money. Bella walked into the chic hotel bar shortly after 8 p.m. and could see Don already perched on a bar stool. But before she could get over to him, she was greeted enthusiastically by her former colleague Mel. Darling, how are you? Looking too foxy. Now come with me. Lucy wants you to meet the mob she's working with at the moment, and Jasper is around somewhere. Bella managed a wave at Don before she was bombarded with a flurry of introductions. She set her face to an interested smile and prepared to handshake. Network, network. That's what this drinks party was all about. Almost an hour had passed before she finally made it over to see Don. Hello. She put her arms round his waist and kissed him on the mouth, tasting whiskey. Hello, Bella. You look lovely, he said. Speak like a financial whiz, but wear an almost see-through top, she answered. Killer combination, he agreed. Irresistible, she said, finally taking a sip from the glass of fizz in her hand. Do you want to stay much longer? He asked. A bit longer. I'll go speak to Jasper and his new buddies, then we'll make a move. You're not too bored, are you? No, he answered. I'm chatting to everyone who drifts past, picking up some sensational stories. You go back to the city hotshots and network for all you are worth. When it was finally time to leave, Bella buckled up in her car and sped back home, Don marvelling that she could drive in those heels. As soon as they were back at the flat, Bella closed the door and pushed him up against it for a long, probing homecoming kiss. She felt him relax as she leaned into him. Slowly, Don ran his hands down from her shoulders to her hips, pulling her in close. As they kissed, he felt for the zip at the back of her skirt and tugged it down so the satin slid into a heap at her feet. He moved his hands down, registering his appreciation that beyond the stocking tops there was no underwear. Oh, I want you, he whispered into her ear. Same, she said, putting her hand in his trousers. Bad news, though, he added between kisses. I have to go away for work this weekend." "No," she protested. "Yeah, so better enjoy me while I'm here." Chapter 3. By Saturday afternoon, Bella had read the FT cover to cover, done work prep for the week ahead, tidied the flat, and was even contemplating making soup before she decided that was just too boring. So she called her best friend Tanya instead. It rang for a few moments before Tanya picked up, sounding breathless. "Hello? Tanny! Bella! Are you doing anything this afternoon that you can't get out of?" Sex? You can get out of that. Depends, darling. How urgent is it? Need a witness to your divorce papers? A +1 on your surprise trip to Istanbul? What are you going to shock me with today? None of those, Bella said. Tanya wasn't going to stop teasing her about her "surprise, I'm getting married, want to come" phone call for some time. "I've been abandoned by my husband for the whole weekend, and I haven't seen you in leggings for ages." "Your husband? Why can I still not get used to that?" "It's been months," Bella reminded her, "almost a year." Okay. Gym it is then," Tanya agreed. "When can you get there?" 3-ish? I love you, Tanny. See you later. Bye. Tanya and Bella's usual routine was a grueling, no-holds-barred workout in the gym, followed by a swim, a sauna, then a long, gossipy meal with gin and tonics to start and a bottle of wine to follow, which pretty much undid all their earlier hard work. They had been friends since university, where Bella had taken one look at Tanya, the only other girl in their maths tutorial group, and fallen in deepest girl crush. Tanya was the most glamorous thing 18-year-old Bella had ever seen. She wore tight, short dresses, had acres of highlighted hair, 2 boyfriends, a French mother, and green contact lenses. She smoked Marlboros, laughed in a dark, flirtatious way, and drove to class in a tiny scarlet Fiat. Newly out of a feministy all-girls school in Oxford, Bella could not have been more different. She wore jeans, Dr. Martens boots and dark jumpers, accessorised with a short bob and puppy fat. She always took the tube and was virginally single. Bella had assumed there was absolutely no hope of Tanya ever talking to her, let alone becoming a friend, but she'd been wrong. Tanya was, like the rest of the class, in awe of Bella's freaky maths genius and determined to get to know her better. Underneath the dweeby exterior, Tanya found Bella upbeat and ambitious, and had seen her as something of a project. First of all, Tanya had taken Bella to the gym, then a little later, the hairdresser, and finally, out shopping with her impossibly chic mother, Valerie. Bella still followed Valerie's makeup advice. Always Chanel, darlings. Anything else ruins the skin, and take it off with cream cleanser, not any kinds of soap. By the time Bella left university, she was slimmer than Tanya, had longer hair, and was madly in love with Daniel, her boyfriend of 2 years. She also knew exactly where she was going next, straight into a graduate traineeship with Lawrence & Co. Her own parents had been horrified at her transformation, especially her mother. Celia Browning, the wife of an Oxford professor, had put her own academic ambitions on hold to have children. She had settled on a career teaching maths at a good school, but had always felt disappointed with her choice, especially as she'd had to watch her husband's stellar academic career from the sidelines. What Celia had always wanted for Bella, who had even more ability than her, was the prestigious university path she'd turned down. But Bella had deserted that for a job in the city. The city, where you didn't even need a maths O-level to get on. No matter how hard her mother tried to analyse it, she basically didn't understand Bella, had no idea why her gifted daughter had wanted this sort of career. Celia understood Bella's interest in her appearance even less. Her daughter's long hair, painted nails, high shoes and short skirts made a mockery of all the ideals she had tried to instill in her. Neither of Bella's parents had yet reconciled themselves to her whirlwind marriage to a 40-something tabloid journalist either. They had argued against it in long and painful calls from their retirement villa in Italy. They had refused to meet Don, not been invited to the intimate wedding, and Bella hadn't seen them since. although once a month or so they had an awkward phone call. It had not helped Don's case that her father had once ended up in the Sunday tabloids after a disciplinary hearing about an improper relationship with a student. Professor Perv, they'd labelled him, of course, and Celia had rallied to the cause, standing by her man and claiming it was all untrue. Her father had taken a leave of absence for a year, but had returned once the fuss had died down. Meanwhile, Celia had suffered a major bout of depression, left her job and gone into therapy for years. It was her dad who'd played away, but her mother was somehow the one with the problem. The injustice of this still enraged Bella. After their gym session, Bella and Tanya went back to Tanya's new flat, where her friends fussing over paint shades and curtain fabric made Bella realise how much she might like to have a home of her own, instead of moving from one impersonal rental to the next. She didn't exactly envy Tanya her love life, though. Bella made the mistake of admiring an exquisite gold bangle Tanya was wearing, only for Tanya to dissolve into tears. "What's the matter?" Bella asked, putting an arm round her shoulder. "Oh, darling, it's bloody Greg. This must be about the 5th time he's brought home a pale blue box from Tiffany's, and I've thought, thank you, God, he's finally going to propose, only to open it and find a bracelet, a necklace, any bloody piece of jewellery you like apart from a ring." "But Tanny, does he know you want to get married?" Bella felt she had to ask the obvious. "Well, it's not just something you can come out with, is it? I bloody well want to be asked. I don't want to propose to him. It should be obvious I want to marry him." "Maybe he thinks you're happy not being married. I mean, you're not even living together," Bella said. "He's the one who insists we have our own flats. He says it's a better investment, and he only lives around the corner." There was a pause, then Tanya quickly wiped her eyes and tried hard to stem the tears. "I'm sorry. I hate sounding like some sad woman obsessed with getting a ring on my finger. I mean, how did you end up getting married first? You always said you'd never get married," Tanya added. "No idea," Bella said with a shrug, a moment of madness on both our parts. The funny thing was that Greg and Don were the same age, but whereas Don was a free-thinking Rolling Stone rebel, 41, Greg was a buttoned-up banking masses of personal finance plans, 41. Maybe Tanya craved the security, but Greg didn't seem to give her that either, and it was strange how he wasn't even hinting at marriage. Men like him were usually desperate to settle down. "I want to get married, and I want to have children," Tanya blurted out. "I'm pretty sure I've made that clear. I've hinted a lot, especially when you got married, and now one of my team is on mat leave. You're not going to do that to me, are you?" Tanya looked up at Bella sternly. "What?" "Go and have a baby before I've even found a husband. I always thought we would do the pregnancy, new baby and career mum thing together." "Whoa, slow down there. When have I ever said I wanted children?" Bella asked. "Yes, but you always said you weren't going to get married, and look at you now." "Don totally talked me into it, and it'll never last," Bella said, but she was smiling, totally convinced that it would definitely last. "Well, he'll be talking you into babies next, I guarantee it," Tanya said. "He's in his 40s, he'll start thinking legacy." "No, he won't. We love our life. We love our jobs. A baby is not on the cards." Don finally came home close to midnight on Sunday. His story had come off and was splashing in the paper tomorrow, so he was in a fantastically good mood. She met him at the front door, showered, wrapped up in her silk robe and smelling delicious. "Hello, fantasy wife," he said, giving her as much of a hug as he could without squashing his armful of goodies. "I've missed you." "This is for us." He waved a champagne bottle. "This is for me." He jiggled his takeaway bag. "And these are for you." He held out a scruffy bunch of petrol station roses. "Thank you. These are for you," she laughed and pulled open her gown to flash her breasts at him. He plonked everything down on the floor and moved in for a proper kiss. After a few moments, he broke away, saying, "It's no use, Bella. I am going to have to eat first. I'm absolutely starving." He ate the takeaway in bed, drinking champagne with her and telling her the week's adventures. When he'd finished, he leaned over, kissed her on the forehead and apologised for his weekend away. "You're so self-contained and self-sufficient," he said. I sometimes forget that you might want me around more. I'm not going to dare suggest that you might need me around." "Of course I need you," she said, wrapping herself around him. "We all need to be loved and held and brought to incredible sexual climax once we've done our weekend work prep." He smiled broadly. Putting the foil dishes on the floor, he said, "Weekend work prep? Okay, can we start making up for lost time now?" Her dressing gown slid down over her shoulders as he kissed and touched her slowly. She helped him out of his clothes until they were curled up naked together on the bed, where they began to make love tenderly, looking deep into each other's eyes, and Bella knew how much she loved him. He was her real-life action hero. He went to war zones, had even resuscitated someone from a heart attack, for God's sake. Next to Don, most other men seemed pretty tame. They were still making love when she asked him, "Would you like to buy a place with me? A home of our own?" "Oh, my God, are we ready? Are we going to get serious? Have a mortgage?" "Oh yeah, husband, we are. Have we got time to look for a place, do the paperwork, have builders in? Sexy builders, please." "Are you objectifying the builders?" "No, I just think buying a place, doing it up, our place, oh, do that again." For a few moments, they could only concentrate on each other. "If buying our home is this sexy, we have to do it," Don told her afterwards. Bella, lying back in the rumpled bed, thought about work. 2 major new clients had been taken on, and for the first time, she was going to be heading up one of the projects herself. There was a lot of work headed her way, big, exciting, challenging work. But they could fit in buying a home, couldn't they? People bought places all the time. It couldn't be so difficult. The next day, Bella went into town and bought a scarily expensive new work suit, just to underline her new resolve. She had it all worked out. Chapter 4. It was hard to pinpoint when the feeling began to grow that something wasn't right. Busy weeks of work took up all her time and seemed to tire her out more than usual. Her sense of smell seemed to sharpen, and all kinds of smells she wouldn't have noticed before became unpleasant. Her enthusiasm for wine, fizz, gin and tonics, and the occasional glass of whiskey to keep Don company completely waned. Her cigarette consumption dropped without even trying. There was this constant taste of metal in her mouth. Maybe it's a virus, one that's lingering, she told herself. But then came the fateful morning when she made her breakfast shake with a scoop of greens as usual, drank it down, and moments later found herself running to the toilet to throw it all back up again. What the fuck is wrong with me? She wondered, as she rested her head on the shiny white lid of the toilet. The words "being sick" and "in the morning" swam around in her mind, and suddenly the phrase "morning sickness" popped up. Morning sickness. Morning sickness? She was jolted upright. What? No, this couldn't. She couldn't possibly be. As she took her pills consecutively with no breaks, there was no missed period to track. But then, some weeks ago now, she had changed prescription. And did she now remember some advice from her GP about extra precautions for a short time? With a lurch of panic, she realised they had not taken those extra precautions. No, quite the opposite. They had made love with just as much intensity and abandon as ever before. Oh my God. But no matter, for now, she would have to box all that up and get to work for a full-on day. Then she would leave on time, swing past the big, anonymous chemist beside the office, and take a test when she got home. Just to check. Just to set her mind at rest. This was nothing. Honestly, the chances were minuscule. A virus, lingering, low level, that's all this was. Really, pull yourself together, Bella. After work, she bought the test, feeling her heart thump hard in her chest as she tapped her card and stuffed the box into her handbag. She rushed back home with that test burning a hole in her bag, and by the time she finally made it through the flat's front door, she was so desperate to get this over with that she went straight to the bathroom, where she fished out the test packet to glance over the instructions. Okay, it wasn't as if she'd never done one of these before. There had been the occasional near miss in the past. So, once the stick had been peed on, she wondered if she should sit watching it or if she should turn it over and wait. She went with turning it over. She looked at her watch. No second hand. She would have to count. Suddenly she felt unable to breathe, let alone count. She stood up, smoothed down her skirt and jacket, and hung her coat up on the bathroom hook as calmly as she could. Hell, it must be time by now. As she put her fingers on the stick, she noticed that her hands were trembling. What do I want? She found herself wondering. What do I really want the result to be? Not able to wait any longer, she flipped the test over and there it was. The second thin line that meant yes, she was pregnant. She stared at it, stared and stared, as if somehow it might change, as if somehow this test might be able to tell her how she actually felt. One emotion she was certain of was shock. She was totally shocked. Every kind of shocked, surprised, stunned, gobsmacked, astounded. She felt herself falling backwards onto the toilet seat, where she sat with the result in her hands and stared at it some more. Her mind felt as if it had gone blank. The first thought to form was, Don and I are pregnant. There it was, not I'm pregnant, but Don and I. This was different. This was so different. She felt off balance and almost unable to process the thought. This wasn't what they had planned, but they loved each other. They overwhelmed each other. A rush of love had carried them into marriage. Now maybe that rush of love had other plans for them. Maybe it was going to carry them into this. Finally, Bella got up, picked up her bags and her coat and put them into their usual places. Then she went into the bedroom where she'd stuffed the test into its box and hid it in a drawer. She could hear her phone ringing now, so went back to her bag to answer. "Hello," she said, seeing Don's name and trying to sound bright. "Hi, babe," came Don's voice. "Hey, are you on your way back?" "Yeah, what should we do for supper?" I haven't thought about it." "Anything in the fridge?" "I'll look. How's your day been anyway?" she asked, heading for the kitchen. "Not too bad. You?" "Yeah, okay. Right." She somehow managed to look in the fridge and concentrate on the contents. "Chicken, some peppers, onions. I think we have noodles. Would that do?" "Perfect. See you soon." How soon, she wondered immediately. Was he going to be here in half an hour? Was she going to tell him now, tonight, as soon as he walked in the door? She had thought she would tell him. Just blurt it out, just get it over with, find out as quickly as possible what he thought, because maybe that would help her work out what she thought. What did she think? She seemed to keep asking herself this question every few minutes. I'm pregnant, what do I think? What do I want? Can this really be happening? What will Don say? What will we do? But when she saw his face as he came in the door, all excited to see her, all desperate to kiss her, hold her, tell her about his day, she just couldn't. So then she thought she would tell him later, and when later came, she thought she would just like to hold this news to herself, maybe overnight, in the hope that the jumbled, tangled thoughts would smooth out a little. "Are you okay?" Don kept asking her. "Just tired," she told him, but she seemed too fidgety and restless for a tired person. Finally, she said she was taking a bath and going to bed early, but she took her laptop with her into the bedroom. Almost an hour later, Don came in to check on her. She was propped up in bed, staring at the screen. "What's up?" he asked gently. "Is it work?" No. She looked up and wondered what to tell him. "I was just messaging Jenna, my friend in New York. But I don't know, it's not flowing tonight." She gave a forced smile. "How is she?" Don asked. "She's good," Bella replied. "Great new job, moving to California, and it looks as if her man might be moving with her. But she's a bit scared by that, I suppose. She messaged the other day, asking about you and marriage, and how would she know if, he was the one?" Bella trailed off. "Aha, and you're sitting there, stuck for words about us." Don smiled at her. "Come on, move over, I'm the wordsmith." He sat down beside her. Their conversation had lasted just long enough for Bella to have quietly deleted all the internet searching she'd done on early pregnancy and call up Jenna's details and a blank message. "Okay." Don pulled the computer into his lap and tapped in his rapid two-fingered typing. "How you know if it's love?" As a heading, then underneath, by Don McCarthy, Chief Correspondent. This made Bella laugh. He began with the words, It's a well-worn cliché, but you do just know. Maybe at first sight, maybe not, but you'll wake up one day and feel it somewhere between your breastbone and your stomach. No individual details matter. Looks, height, hair colour, job description, but that person makes you happy, gives you a warm glow. Oh, no, he said, hitting delete. Sounds like a porridge ad. Brings you joy and understanding, he typed. Makes you laugh, makes love like it really matters. You'll go way beyond the extra mile for them, and you know they'll do it for you. Oh, that's so sweet, Bella said, reading over his shoulder. Sweet? He was smiling at her. I set out my philosophy of love, and all you can say is sweet. Bella, you're embarrassed, aren't you? Do you love me even half as much as I love you? He was still smiling, but she detected an undertow of seriousness. Of course I do, Don, of course. That's okay then. She put her arms round him and kissed him on the mouth, and it should have been a good moment, but she couldn't sum up the courage to tell him. And 1 whole week later, she still hadn't told him, which felt wrong. But she was so anxious. She didn't know what she wanted. How could she possibly know what he would want? And so far the plan had been no children. So his life was potentially about to take an entirely different turn on the route he had mapped out with her. As she lay in bed beside him, she wondered if she really knew him well enough to guess how he would react. Almost exactly 1 year ago, they'd rushed into marriage at the Chelsea Register office. It had been a cool wedding, with not a shred of the white or traditional about it. Well, there hadn't been time to arrange all that for a start. As soon as she'd said yes, Don had fixed up the first available date at the registrar's, convinced there was a risk she might change her mind. She'd worn a long, tight, wine-coloured lace dress with her hair up. Don was in slightly rumpled black linen and somehow ended up carrying the flowers. There had been just a small crowd, closest friends and as few relatives as they could get away with, made easier by the fact her own parents didn't come. Everyone had taxied to Claridge's for a monumental lunch, then Don and Bella had sent the guests on their way so they could start their honeymoon. In their wonderful room, they had filled the enormous bathtub to the brim with hot water and foam and moved in there for hours, swigging gloriously expensive champagne out of the bottle, singing love songs and having giggly sex. It had been so romantic.